So a few days ago, I uploaded my first Gold Order weapon suggestion video, and you guys reacted quite positively to that video, so therefore I'm going to be doing my second video. And this time we're going to mix it up a little bit, and we're going to do the Pacific Gold Order weapons, to be exact, the Japanese Gold Order weapons. So without further ado, this video has been made possible for your friends at Discord, so I highly suggest that you join the Discord. And that said, let's get started with the Pacific Gold Order weapons, since this is all I need for an introduction, and let's get started. First up, we have the Type 1 SMG, or the Type 1 Nambu SMG, also called the Type 1 Experimental Submachine Gun. It was a Japanese submachine gun that was produced by Nambu Arms Manufacturing Company. The Type 1 was designed by Major General Shimakoko Tokugana in late 1934, but the patents were held by Kurojo Nambu, who took up the production of the designs of his Tokyo factory. It was trialed and then rejected by the Imperial Japanese Army, but issued very little units to the Japanese Navy Marines in Shanghai during the Second Sino-Japanese War. Despite never being formally adopted, the Type 1 was also offered for international export and was briefly investigated by the British Army in 1939 as a personal defense weapon for tank crews, but was ultimately rejected for this role. After 1939, the international sales of the weapons were retracted and was not exported to any other country. The Type 1 was succeeded by the Type 2, which remained the method of operation, offered a more conventional magazine fed. The design of the Type 1 was a backward blowback operating submachine gun that fired from a closed bolt, and the returning spring was then wrapped around the edge of the barrel in front to reduce the overall length of the weapon and clasp the front of the bolt. Upon firing, the entire front section of the gun came back to the bolt and was pushed forward for the remaining spring. The barrel then remained stationary. Housing in the rear of the gun was a bolt buffer device to reduce the tension of the action. Ultimately, for the time, the Type 1 fed magazine was through a pistol grip, and was the first produced submachine gun to do so. The magazine held 50 rounds, and it was in a curved quadrant shape, which is quite interesting. 50 round magazine. Located at the bottom of the magazine was a hinged latch that could be fitted to a vehicle mount, and the underside of the Type 1 barrel could be fitted with a detachable metal hand grip, so to protect the user's hand from touching the barrel while in use. And that is the Type 1 Nambu SMG. Let's move on to the Type 2, which is more famous. The Type 2 SMG was a development of the earlier Type 1 SMG, designed to respond to the criticisms of the Type 1 awkward ergonomics. The Type 2 offered a more conventional magazine fed in stock, but was wholly retained to the Type 1's method of operation and essentially became the same gun in a different body. It was initially produced in the mid-1930s and was tested by the Imperial Japanese Army, but was then rejected. During World War II, an urgent demand for automatic weapons saw the revival of several experimental weapon projects. These included Type 2 SMG. Small numbers of the Type 2 were then produced during the period to meet demands and were issued to Japanese infantry both in the Pacific and in China, resulting in samples being captured by Allied forces. The British and American Army studied the weapons after the war, whilst the Mukden arsenal in China reverse engineer, captured examples, and produced copies of the Mukden Type 2, which was operationally identical but chambered in the 0.45 ACP rather than the 8x22mm Nambu design. The Type 2 was also a blowback operated submachine gun that fired from close bolt, much like the Type 1. And the Type 2's returning spring evolved the barrel of the gun, making it behind the bolt, and the front section of the receiver and the barrel should travel away in the bolt upon firing and pushing back towards the returning spring. The barrel then remained also stationary. The clocking handle was not located in the stroke groove, but instead took the front of the approaching tab to fix the left side of the receiver, and early versions of the Type 2 were built with the same buffer device seen on the Type 1, which, let's be honest, isn't really that rare. This was done to pressure valve located under the rear cap, and then wartime models often omitted the air bubble featured in the attempt to cut the expensive production costs. The Type 2 was then issued with a 30 round magazine, although the Type 1 had a 50 round magazine, which is somewhat of an issue. Although it could not fit the same 50 round magazine like the Type 1, later examples of the Type 2 had a bayonet, which was not featured in the original production models, and a spike bayonet was also designed for the gun, but was not used on production models. The finished late war models was typically poor compared to the earlier pre-war models, and yeah, that is it for the Type 1 and Type 2. Before we move on, I would like to say the Type 1 and Type 2 can be easily given as SMGs to the Japanese, either as the gold order weapons, a premium squad, and literally as for the progression unlocks, because the Japanese don't really have a lot of SMGs, and giving them any SMG is a pretty big step up. That said, every weapon in my Gold Order review videos or my Gold Order suggestion videos can be given to any branch. For example, you can give them as Gold Orders, you can bring them along as premium weapons, you can even bring them on as progression orders. I just hope that some form of these weapons are in game. But that said, let's move on to the third weapon that we have, and that is the Type 99 LMG with the scope. Prior to the development of the Type 99 LMG, the Japanese army was using the Type 96 LMG, and if you haven't watched my previous video about the Japanese weapons Enlisted, I highly suggest you do. Both earlier Type 11 and Type 96 light machine guns used the same 6.5 by 50mm Arasaka cartridge as the Type 38 infantry rifle, using similar ammunition for both guns. However, in 1939, the Japanese army was in the process of switching to the larger and more powerful 7.7mm cartridge, which had no rim, which improved cartridge handling. This more powerful cartridge of twice the more energy compared to the 6.5 Arasaka, which had almost half the energy, required a firearm that had more steel, bigger springs, and a heavier bolt to handle the extra force involved. This required a switch to the Type 38 rifles to the Type 99 rifles, and from the Type 96 light machine guns to the Type 99 machine guns, of which the Nagoya Arsenal and Mukden made a total of 53,000 of these Type 99 light machine guns. The Type 99 had basically the exact same design of the Type 96 with a number of parts found in common. However, it was dispersed with an oiler and had a pretty primary extraction, increasing reliability over the predecessor, and early models had a monopod on the stick and a flash suppressor on the muzzle, which, let's be honest, the suppressor is quite interesting. It is screwed on a fretted portion of the gun barrel, and for this type, it has a curved detached box magazine that held 30 rounds, much like the Bren, and like the Bren, the Type 99 bear the distinct resemblance to the Bren. The Type 99 also has a front sight, rear sight with a graduations of 200 to 150 meters, and a wind adjustable sight. Most importantly for this section, the Type 99 has a 2.5x telescopic scope with a 10 degrees view that could be attached to the right side of the gun. This was mainly issued to the best marksman of the unit and occasionally deployed as a sniper rifle, of which the latter we don't know for sure. But that said, Type 99 light machine gun with 30 rounds giving a scope, a 2.5mm scope, is quite interesting. It's very, very rare considering the fact that it's going to be the first light machine gun with a scope, and I'm really interested to see a light machine gun with a scope and with a bayonet, because the Type 99 was given a bayonet. So once again, a pretty interesting weapon, albeit the weapon has been referred many times and is not that common, but the scope is really uncommon, and like it said, it was given to the best marksman of the unit, so once again, it really does require a lot of skill. But that said, the Type 99 with a scope and possibly a bayonet, and if you're really into it, a suppressor, which actually was featured in one of the old American movies, in which the Americans captured a Type 99 and used it as a trophy weapon. But that said, this Type 99 with a scope is one of the most interesting weapons. Next, we have the Japanese Pedersen Rifle. This Japanese semi-automatic rifle of the early 1930s had a 4 total entrants, of which is Nambu and his company Tokyo Gas and Electric, the Tokyo Arsenal, and the Nippon Special Steel Company. The rifle was the third iteration of the design from the Nippon Special Steel and was a design based originally on Pedersen, but with subtle changes. That's why it's called the Japanese Pedersen Rifle. It had a toggle locked and gas operated action with a gas piston that moved upon firing, and it fed from a 10-round detachable box magazine, which is unfortunately missing from most weapons, because, let's be honest, it's really rare. In total, 13 of these rifles were made for trial, and 4 of them were actually being tested and fired over 10,000 rounds without any extraction problems, apparently. This rifle did have some accuracy problems, which was fixed with the designer for the 4th and final trials, which at point the Tokyo Army Arsenal rifle was determined to be the equal quality, and the whole program was then dropped as the Marco Polo Bridge incident caused the Sino-Japanese War, which, really, it's kind of funny considering the fact that you made a semi-automatic rifle, but then you dropped the semi-automatic rifle. But that said, for our last rifle, we have another semi-automatic rifle. And honestly, please, Enlisted, do not use these. I swear, please do not use these rifles for use as a progression weapon. Make them gold order weapons, make them premium squad weapons. Don't give them to the entire player base. It's not gonna be fun. It's just gonna be another semi-automatic rifle spam. That said, we have the type Hiei rifle, and an experimental is also known as the experimental automatic rifle Hiei. And it was a Japanese prototype self-loading rifle by the Nippon Steel. And it was a Japanese rifle produced by Nippon Special Steel. And the Hei rifle was one of the Hei or Hiei rifle was the 3 self-loading rifle designs commissioned by the Imperial Japanese Army for military trials. It was this time designed by Major Dr. Masaya Kawamura and was produced at the Nippon Special Steel Company. The first prototypes were then constructed in 1932, and an estimated about 50 models were made. Trials took place in 1935. However, none of the rifles were tested to be considered suitable for service, and the project's costs were too high to fulfill the cost of the production run, so the project was cancelled. During the Second World War, however, small amount of these rifles were available and were allegedly pressed into service, and some were even captured by US troops in the Pacific Theater. The Dr. Kamamura was also developed a fully automatic variant of the Type Hiei rifle with an expanded 20-round magazine. Once again, please, please, Enlisted, don't use this. This version was called the Experimental Ultralight Machine Gun. Okay, oh my god. This variant was tested in 1938, but was adopted and then rejected due to its low reliability and too high rate of fire. Oh my god, this is going to be the Japanese FG-42 if I continue. The Type Hiei was a toggle action self-loading rifle derived from its action from the Pedersen Rifle, modified to use the basic gas piston to unlock the bolt. Earlier prototypes of the Hiei rifle had a detachable 5-round magazine, whereas later models had a 10-round magazine. Both magazines could be loaded through the Arasaka stripper clips, and the magazine could be located in the front of the trigger where the trigger guard. The rear sight had an adjustable aperture for 300 to 1,500 meters. But that said, this is all of the weapons for today. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the Discord. And tell me, what do you think of these weapons, and should I do more of these Enlisted Gold Order weapon suggestions? But that said, have a great day guys, and I'll see you in the next one.
Now before you leave, I would like to thank you very much for watching this video. I will be honored if you could like and subscribe to the channel. Remember, more videos are coming out, so it is a good idea to click on that notification button. Anyways, have a great day, and I'll see you in the next one.